There's been all this talk this year about what is the hottest hatch in the US, and also what is the best sports car under $50,000. Now, everyone loves the GR Corolla, Honda Civic Type R, and the Golf R, but all three of those hatchbacks are rather expensive, including with the Golf R, you're spending over $50,000. It was also recently announced that the Volkswagen GTI for 2025 is the car of the year for Motor Trend, and I decided, why not check out the 2025 Volkswagen GTI and see what Volkswagen has done for the 8.5 update? Because this car does look a bit more streamlined. They've updated the technology, and also its pricing really isn't that unreasonable. So in today's video, we're going to check out what the 2025 Volkswagen GTI has to offer us. We're going to check out the exterior, the interior, take it out for a quick test drive, and see why, if you're looking at buying a hot hatch and a fun daily driver, maybe once again, the Volkswagen GTI needs to be at the top of your list of considerations. Now, before we get in this video, I want to give a huge shout and thank you to Gervais Volkswagen here in Lowell, Massachusetts for letting me come down here to check out this Volkswagen GTI. Their link will be in the description below, so you can check out their extensive Volkswagen inventory. So as always, let's begin with that pricing. For the Volkswagen GTI we have today, we have the Autobahn, which comes in at just under $42,500. Pricing has always been a point of contention here because, yes, the Mark 8 GTI did become rather expensive compared to the Mark 7.5, but here we are now in 2025, and all the competitors have gone up on their pricing, whether it was the Subaru WRX, which isn't a hatchback, the GR Corolla, Honda Civic Type R, and obviously, again, with that Golf R, it's over $50,000. So at 42 grand, you're saving some money here. Now, you don't necessarily have to go with the Autobahn. I personally don't think this is the pick for the 2025 GTI because I do think you could be very happy with an S or an SE, and those come in below $40,000. I also want to point out, too, that right now, as of the day I'm making this video, Volkswagen has a lot of incentives where you can actually get this under 42 grand, but that comes down to your location and time you're buying this hatchback. Now, for the 2025 model year, it's all about the redesign and the slight resculpture of the front and rear fascias. Now, honestly, there's really not that much of a difference, mostly for the rear fascia. Up front's a bit of a different story, though, where you are going to notice a bit more of an aggressive look here, and they did change some things up front. So first off, you're going to have a new lighting system, which I don't think Volkswagen really needed to change at all for the Mark 8. But it gives you a bit more of an upscale look. Obviously, you're going to have that red line and accent that makes its way through the front fascia, and you will have the light bar that runs the length of the front fascia as well. Volkswagen loves that right now in their lineup. For the lower portion of the front bumper, they've made it a bit more aggressive. So it looks a bit more, I'd say, not upscale, but it is looking a bit more refined here. You're still going to have your 5-point LED fog lights, which look really cool. And then you will have this aggressive front grille. So Volkswagen kept it simple for this 8.5 update, but it still looks aggressive like it did before. But then as you make your way over to the side profile, I really like these 9-inch alloy wheels that make their way on the Autobahn trim. Now, in some ways, they kind of look like a wheel package that comes off of the Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio from far away, but I'm okay with that. I think what Volkswagen's doing with their wheel packages for the 8 and 8.5 is most certainly an upgrade over the 7 and 7.5. That's just my take. And for the Autobahn, this looks a bit more Audi-like for sure. You are going to have body color matched side mirror caps with turn signal indicators. They're also power folding as well. Very nice. And you will have blind spot detection for added safety. And you will have the GTI badge on the front door. I don't really like that. That's a bit tacky. I kind of like the old design from the 7.5. And making our way around to the back here, really not much has changed for the 8.5. Sure, a bit of an update to the taillight design, but you're going to be over-analyzing that compared to an 8. That is not a big deal whatsoever, and I don't really think it's that noteworthy. Unfortunately, Volkswagen didn't fix the GTI badge here for the 8.5. It's still off-center, which just bothers me a bit. It bothers my OCD. Then for the lower portion of the rear bumper, you have the dual exhaust outlets once again, and this cladding here. We saw that on the 7.5, we saw it on the 8, and it returns for the 8.5. You're also going to have that aggressive spoiler here and some gloss black trim as well. But I do think that Volkswagen is kind of playing it safe here with the Autobahn, where unlike with the 7.5, you don't have the gloss black trim here for the higher trims. I kind of like that two-tone look, but for a GTI that actually feels a bit more Audi-like for the interior, maybe this is the way to go for a lot of you looking at buying a hot hatch right now. Powering our Volkswagen GTI today is going to be a familiar sight. the EA888, also known as a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine from Volkswagen, producing 241 horsepower and 273 pound-feet of torque. It is paired with a 7-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission. There is no manual option for the 8.5, unfortunately. However, this 7-speed dual-clutch might be the best automatic transmission money can buy at around $40,000. That might not be too much of an issue here if you are an enthusiast. Now, what you're also going to find here out of this engine is that there's no boost in performance. Now, we saw that from the 7 to 7.5, but for the 8 to 8.5, there is no difference. So I'm a bit surprised by that, to be honest, because this is a very competitive segment, and a boost in performance would be very necessary and very much welcomed here in this class. Now, you're also not going to have all-wheel drive. That is reserved for the Golf R, so front-wheel drive only, the way most of you like it here out of this hatchback. Then when it pertains to fuel economy, you're looking at right around 24 miles per gallon in the city and 32 miles per gallon on the highway, which is pretty economical here out of a car that does have a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. And if you're looking for a fun daily driver, at least you're not going to the pump every single day. Hopping inside the Autobahn trim, you are going to receive heated and ventilated leather trim seats for both the driver and passenger, with the driver's side having power adjustability and memory seat functionality, whereas the passenger will have to manually find their ideal seating position. Now, I have been critical about the 8, and the same kind of carries over to the 8.5, but where I can't be critical is with the seats. I think Volkswagen has done a really good job with this generation compared to the 7 and 7.5, especially on the higher end. These sports seats, they're comfortable, they're also very, very supportive. The bolstering is pretty aggressive here. Now, these seats kind of remind me of what you are going to find out of an Audi S3. In some ways, this generation has closed that gap on the MQB platform, where you could look at this as being a front-wheel drive hatchback version of the S3, and with that thought process, at $42,000, this could be a smart man's choice here. Now, what you're also going to notice, too, with the interior is that it is very tech-focused and somewhat on the minimalist side when it comes to its design, and this is where people have been critical. But where you can't criticize this car is with the digital gauge cluster and some other tech aspects for the interior. So, starting off with the steering wheel, beefy leather-wrapped steering wheel, which feels really nice in the hands, aggressive 10-2 and firm 9-3 grips. For 2025 and the 8.5, they got rid of the haptic feedback buttons, and we now had the physical buttons once again. Volkswagen listened. In front of you with that full digital gauge cluster, I think this is the best display you're going to find here in this class from mainstream manufacturers. Volkswagen has a bit more experience here than Toyota and Honda, and it shows. They're also taking parts from Audi too, so they've learned a bit here for this type of display. I like the fact that it's intuitive, that it's very in-depth. You can display the maps here. It's really nice, and it gives you a very refined experience hopping into this car for the first time. I think a lot of you are going to be very impressed here with that aspect. Also, by going with the Autobahn trim, you will have a head-up display with traffic sign recognition, so that way you can keep your eyes on the road ahead of you rather than looking down at screens. And before we check out that infotainment system, on the left side next to your digital gauge cluster is unfortunately some haptic feedback buttons for your outside lighting system, your fog lights, and then you will have your max front and rear defrosters. So be careful when you're turning on your lights, you might accidentally turn on the rear defroster or front defroster. Now, as we take a look at this infotainment system, you are going to have a 12.9-inch touchscreen with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android compatibility to go along with onboard navigation, and the Harman Kardon audio system to amplify the audio of your favorite music. As great as this screen looks, it is a visual upgrade over the 8. Volkswagen still hasn't addressed one of the problems we had with the pre-facelifted model, and that is no physical buttons and dials for the dual zone climate control, AC, front rear defrosters, fan speed, fan direction, nor do we have physical dials here for the volume and tuning. And that is the one thing I want to see returned to the GTI and for newer Volkswagens. Now, this is the same setup that we are going to find out of the new Volkswagen Tiguan. We've experienced that numerous times. So unfortunately, this will be the same head unit we'll be seeing for quite some time now, at least for the next 4 to 5 years. I will say, though, that Volkswagen has updated the software pretty well. It is user-friendly, it is straightforward, and it doesn't lag like the 8. So a nice upgrade here for sure. Above your main display will be quick access icons for your vehicle settings, your auto start stop, your navigation, your phone connectivity, and then also your radio as well. So at least you have that there. Now you will have different drive modes, obviously, with this being a Volkswagen GTI. And you'll have Eco, Comfort, Sport, and Custom. You can also access this menu by pressing the mode button on the dashboard itself. You're also going to notice your climate menu and then your parking menu. So all of that is there. Still haptic feedback, unfortunately. Now when you place the GTI in reverse, you are going to have a rear backup camera with trajectory. No top view though, so that is one thing to keep in mind here, even though this is an Autobahn, so a lot of the cool stuff is reserved for Audis. But it is a multi-angle rear backup camera, giving you a 180-degree view as well, providing better visibility. Also, you have front and rear parking sensors as well, giving you a little bit more safety and assurance, and also peace of mind. Continuing on, beneath the head unit, and also that small little button layout here that also includes your hazard lights, you will have 2 USB-C inputs and a wireless phone charging pad. Then for the center console itself, gloss black trim. I know you guys are going to be complaining about that, but Volkswagen has used gloss black for quite some time, even out of the Mark 7.5. So we've kind of gotten used to that, but this will be difficult to clean and maintain throughout the years of ownership. You'll have your engine start stop button, your park button, then that small little gear shifter here, which kind of looks like it comes right out of the Porsche 911. Electronic parking brake, then a small cubby for some loose change. You're going to find your cup holder here. I would just say one cup holder. You might be able to squeeze in a second one. Kind of a weird design. You're also going to have a 12-volt outlet. Then for the standard storage compartment, enough room for some smaller items, maybe a couple wallets, smartphones, and other smaller gadgets and items there. And then above, to round out the front seating area, will be a power moonroof, which brings in a lot of natural light to the interior. Now for passengers in the second row, the one thing I want to point out here is that, alright, it is a hatchback, so it is practical, but the second row seating area isn't the most spacious, even from Volkswagen, because you're looking at right on 35 inches of legroom, which would fall in line with a lot of smaller cars in this class. But if you're comparing those to a Volkswagen Jetta GLI, the GLI comes in at 37.5 inches. So if you need the extra space, you don't really care about the practicality necessarily for the cargo area, the GLI might be the better choice. But then again, if you're looking for a daily driver, a well-rounded daily driver, the GTI is still going to be the way to go here. Before the Autobahn, though, one thing I do like is the amenities. So you are going to have climate control. So 3-zone climate control out of the Autobahn trim for 2025 to go along with heated outboard seats. And there will be 2 center-mounted air vents. You're also going to find 2 USB-C inputs as well. Then, as always, you will have a center armrest with 2 cup holders. But I think what Volkswagen is doing here is just enough to make this a great choice. Again, on the lower end with the S and SE. The Autobahn at around $42,000 is where it gets a bit more questionable. But when it comes to the overall seating capacity and just the space that we have here, headroom is pretty impressive. Legroom can be a bit tight if you have a tall passenger in front of you. And shoulder room wise, it's not much different than the Mark 7 and 7.5. So very standard for Volkswagen, but I do think that when it comes to the overall quality and refinement, this most certainly feels Audi-like for sure. Then returning to the rear fascia to take a look at the cargo area for the 2025 Volkswagen GTI. Just lift up on that emblem and the hatch opens nice and wide. And inside, behind the second row seats, you're looking at right around 19 cubic feet of room. And if you're someone looking for a fun daily driver, but you also need to focus on practicality, that's where the GTI comes into play and is a very smart choice because it's one of the only options under $40,000 with the GR Corolla becoming a bit more expensive. So even on the lower end for like an S or an SE at around 35 grand, you're getting a car that is very flexible. It's more than one dimensional. It's not just sporty, it's also family friendly and you can use this for weekend road trips. So that's where it really comes into play. It's a very good choice. On both sides of the rear cargo area, there are some cubbies for some smaller items, maybe for a couple water bottles, car detail equipment, or maybe even a first aid kit. Best of all though here with the GTI is that you are going to have a spare tire beneath the floor mat. So if you do encounter a flat on those road trips or travels, you can fix that and be back on the road. And then with the second row seats folded, you're looking at right around 34.5 cubic feet of room, which for a car under $40,000 would be unrivaled. But for the Autobahn trim, if you're comparing this to a GR Corolla and then a Honda Civic Type R at around $47,000, the Civic Type R is a bit more spacious. So you might want to keep that in mind here. But out of the GTI, you had that space if you are moving some boxes around. So that's where the GTI has always been a great choice here in the US. 2025 has been a pretty good year for the GTI. New 8.5 generation with a cosmetic facelift, new technology. Also, an award recipient. It is now receiving accolades. Kind of amazing considering a couple of years ago, people couldn't stand this car. For one, they didn't like the design, they didn't like the technology, and they didn't like the pricing. Including myself, I did not like the pricing for this car because the Mark 7.5, you could buy one for under $30,000, and then to get an S for the Mark 8, you were spending around 35 grand. It just wasn't worth it because performance-wise, you could just say, well, I'll buy a 7.5, throw on a tune, and also get stiffer sway bars, and I have the exact same car. And yet now, in 2025, this is becoming the hottest hatch in America. Why? What changed? Well, as you discovered, nothing's changed. All the features carry over to the 8.5 from the Mark 8. There's no difference in performance, and yet this hatchback is becoming loved. It's mostly due to the fact that all the rivals are increasing their pricing. Because a Subaru WRX, you could buy one for around $30,000 for a base, which that got dropped. But even for a premium now, you're spending close to $40,000. The GR Corolla is seeing a price increase for 2026. The Civic Type R is over 45 grand. And then the Golf R is over $50,000. If you're looking for a hot hatch, if you're looking for a practical sports car, the GTI and Elantra N is all you got. And with the Hyundai Elantra N, it's a sedan. It's not as practical. So the GTI now is slotting back into place as being America's hot hatch. Now, with the Autobahn trim, you have a good amount of features, not only comfort-wise, but also when it comes to performance, because you do get the DCC system. So when you throw it in comfort mode, the suspension and chassis kind of calms down a bit. You can relax, you can enjoy the driving experience. But if you're on a winding back road, throw it into sport, and you can have a lot of fun, a lot of exhilaration, and it gives you a lot of feedback. With this particular model, it almost feels Audi-like. It feels like an Audi S3, but it's front-wheel drive. And I think that's the key here. Now, like I said before, I don't think you need to go with an Autobahn. I think an SE or an S is more than suitable for a lot of you. And that's what makes this car so great, in my opinion. That now in 2025, $35,000 doesn't seem all that expensive. In fact, it seems like a bargain. But even at 42 grand for the model we have today, it undercuts a lot of its rivals. Now, sure, you don't get all-wheel drive, but you're getting a car that's peppy, that's fun, and also has a great transmission and engine. That alone makes this a great choice. Now, what I really love, though, is that for the Mark 8 and 8.5, Volkswagen stiffened the chassis and suspension just a bit more. Where in the corners, you don't have that lift in the back. It feels flat. It feels planted to the roadways. A lot of you who own Mark 7 and 7.5s know where I'm coming from, where when you're on the winding back road, it feels as though the car is getting away from you. That shouldn't be happening. But with the Mark 8 and 8.5, that isn't an issue. Also, with this retune out of this EA888 turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, you notice that immediately. This car has a lot more pep to it. And when you do get on throttle, it puts you back in your seat. And that upgrade, in my opinion, is enough to make this a worthy successor and also a worthy replacement if you're like myself and you own a Mark 7 or 7.5. Now, as I discovered with the Mark 8 a couple of weeks ago, the seat positioning, the chassis, the suspension, you feel a bit more in tune with this car. You feel a bit more a part of the overall driving experience. And with the Autobahn and the 8.5, that doesn't change, which I'm very happy to see. Now let's get on the highway here. Let's see what the 8.5 can offer us here, also with the DCC system, and if it can corner really well on this on-ramp. There is so much confidence here out of the box. And it's so playful. Compared to its rivals, I think the suspension is most certainly in line with them now. The only drawback is the fact you don't get a manual transmission. I think that is what's going to hurt this hatchback in the long run, although most Americans choose automatics. So what makes this ultimately an all-around great hot hatch is that it's versatile in many ways. It's comfortable, but it can also be fun, it can also be dynamic, and then two, it's practical enough to be a great daily driver, to be a one-car solution. It might not be the ultimate one-car solution, but it's enough at around $35,000 to $40,000 to make this a worthy opponent in this class. Now, I will say though, at highway speeds, and what I've noticed today with these wheels, you are going to notice a lot more road noise. I mean, there's not a lot of interior insulation to this car, and that is the one thing I don't like about the Mark 8. The Mark 7 did have, in a way, a bit more of a quieter interior. I'm noticing way too much road noise here, especially with the 19s. So that might be one thing to consider here, why I would go with the S over the Autobahn or the SE, just because it feels a bit more quieter. But outside of that though, what the Autobahn is going to be offering you is a great all-around car, and it always was that. So ultimately, after this quick test drive, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. Volkswagen has a good formula here. Maybe back in 2022, it didn't make a lot of sense with what they had done. But now in 2025, looking at what their rivals are doing on the pricing side, this has become a great value. This has become, once again, the best choice here if you're looking for a practical sports car. And hey, Volkswagen is back. They're back to what they do best, and it just required everyone else doing something really stupid with the pricing. But even for an Autobahn, SE or an S, you can't go wrong with this car. Volkswagen did a pretty good job with this generation. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this quick review for the 2025 Volkswagen GTI Autobahn. If you did, please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more, and I will see you guys next time.